Hi, this is Ange Pompano, author of The Mysteries Diet of Death and When It's Time for Leaving. Kick back with me and listen to Ann Dark, Tracy Stormy, and Kathy Knight with their guest on the Dark and Stormy podcast.
Hello and welcome to Dark and Stormy Book Club. Today we visit with the author Gregg Hurwitz. Enjoy.
I'm Ann Dark.
I'm Tracy Stormy.
And I'm Kathy Knight.
And together we are
It Was a Dark and Stormy Book Club,
a podcast for mystery lovers.
Welcome.
If you enjoy our show, please consider contributing to the Dark and Stormy Patreon. By becoming a patron, you will help us create better and quality content. There are also benefits to becoming a patron, such as exclusive content and Dark and Stormy merchandise. Become a supporter at patreon.com/darkandstormybc. Check our website for the link. We appreciate any and all contributions. Thank you.
The Last Orphan by Gregg Hurwitz, published by Minotaur Books, coming out today, February 14th. As a child, Evan Smoak was plucked out of a group home, raised and trained as an off-the-books assassin for the government as part of the Orphan program. When he broke with the program and went deep underground, he left with a lot of secrets in his head that the government would do anything to make sure never gets out. When he remade himself as the Nowhere Man, dedicated to helping the most desperate in their times of trouble, Evan found himself slowly back on the government's radar. Having eliminated most of the orphans in the program, the government will stop at nothing to eliminate the threat they see in Evan. But Orphan X has always been several steps ahead of his pursuers, until he makes one little mistake. Now the president has him in her control and offers Evan a deal. Eliminate a rich, powerful man she says is too dangerous to live, and in turn, she'll let Evan survive. But when Evan left the program, he swore to only use his skills against those who really deserve it. Now he has to decide what's more important, his principles or his life. We would like to welcome to the program Gregg Hurwitz. He is the author of one of my favorite series, The Orphan X. Ooh. And his book is called The Last Orphan. Welcome, Gregg.
Thanks for having me on.
My first question is, this isn't going to be the last one, is it?
Well, because it's called The Last Orphan. I guess We're going to have to read that book and figure out if it's the case or not.
Well, I read the book.
Sassy.
What do you think?
The ending was sort of up in the air, but there's places you could grow from that.
Yep, there's some room. There's some places we could go.
For our listeners who haven't read the books, would you give us a ballpark picture of
story
Orphan
of
X?
what they're about? So Orphan X was raised in a foster home in East Baltimore, and at the age of 12 he was taken out of the home and trained to be an assassin for the U.S. government. Basically, he was trained to be an expendable weapon. He was somebody who was totally disposable. If he gets killed, no one's ever going to miss him. But his handler from the CIA and father figure who raises him in isolation also loves him. And he tells Evan when he's young, when he's 12 years old, he says, the hard part is not going to be making you a killer. The hard part is keeping you human. Ooh. And so those are two things that are a collision course. And so as Evan continues in this and he commits executions for the US government, and he's this operator, but at some point his moral compass becomes misaligned from what it is that he's being asked to do.
Yeah.
And so he goes on the run and he leaves the program and he becomes basically a pro bono assassin. People can call him on his encrypted line, which is 1-855-2-NOWHERE, which you can call and you can see if somebody answers. and he will help people in desperate need who have nowhere else to turn.
That is fascinating. I'm also an author, just FYI, so that you're aware of that. No, that's okay. I just don't want to hit you out of left field with something and you're like, okay.
Who is this lady?
Right. Who are you and why are you asking that? What prompted you to make him 12?
You know what? It's such an interesting question. So when I was writing it, it was just the right age, right? He's the smallest kid in the foster home. And part of why Jack picks him is he gets knocked down the most.
Okay.
But he's also the kid who gets up the most. And so he's chosen on the basis of his grit. And so I just thought it was the perfect age for him. He's the smallest, scrawniest kid. And Jack basically plucks him out of there and trains him up. And I think it's the age right before you're about to become the next iteration of yourself, right? When you're 12 years old, I was a really small 12-year-old. In hindsight, I didn't really think about that, but that was also the age I was at when I felt the littlest and probably the most vulnerable. And one of the things when Jack chooses him, he tells him for later on in his life, he goes, look, that feeling you have of feeling vulnerable right now, I don't want you ever to forget that. You remember that in your bones for when you're helping people who feel powerless, who feel desperate, who you're trying to intercede on their behalf.
Right.
So he's not the biggest guy or the strongest guy. I mean, one of the things about Evan Smoak, that's Orphan X's name, is he's not the best looking guy like James Bond, and he's not the biggest guy like Reacher. One of the lines I describe him as, I say, average size, average build, not too handsome.
Although doesn't that then make him nondescript? That's the kind of person who can flit in and out of society without being noticed. I would think that's what you want for an assassin, is somebody who's not going to be like, hey, I'm over here. If you could just kind of move a little bit, my shot isn't quite right. You know, I mean, you want somebody who can weave their way through
look
society.
Right past them.
That is really awesome.
He's called the Nowhere Man.
Now, how many books are there in this series so far?
This is the 8th. It comes out on Valentine's Day.
Ooh.
And The Last Orphan is the 8th in the series. The series starts with Orphan X.
Okay. And he's aged, I'm assuming, through the 8 books?
A bit. Yeah, not like you and I, but he's aging some.
Okay.
He's taking his time a little more.
That's all right.
Yeah, it's okay.
Well, you said with 12, I have 2 brothers who are younger than I am. And I very clearly remember them at that 12 on the cusp of 13. And I would think that his handler thought, this is a malleable one. This is the age that I want to be able to change his world without too much back pushing.
That's right. He's broken down and rebuilt. He's honed into becoming basically the perfect weapon. And that's exactly the age to get to start a lifetime of training for that. And he's out at committing missions in other countries and places the U.S. isn't allowed to be.
Right.
From the age of 19 on.
Wow.
I like that he has his set of commandments.
He has his 10 assassin's commandments that he lives by.
Yes. And it's the second one, I believe, that he tells the president he's not going to do what she wants if it doesn't fit into his second commandment.
Well, his second commandment is how you do anything is how you do everything. That's the most quoted one. So there's people have that on jewelry and tattoos, and soldiers quote it. And that's become quite a thing, that how he tries to do everything from a position of excellence.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you say that that's on jewelry, do you mean out in the real world right now?
I mean, people have had it made. Yeah.
From your books?
Yes.
Whoa. How was that the first time you were told that somebody got that tattoo?
Yeah, it's great having a series like Orphan X that gets its own traction in the real world and means something to people.
My question is, why isn't this a movie?
We're working on that. I adapted it once for Bradley Cooper. He went on to do A Star is Born. I got the rights back. I adapted it for a bunch of other people for TV. And right now I'm waiting. We get a lot of queries in from directors and actors, and I'm waiting to get the right combination because I realize I can no longer write it now. I'm too many books in, and I can't chart both lanes of this parallel universe by myself anymore. Yeah. I need somebody else who I really trust, who really gets the DNA of the character, to go back and reboot it and to take it. So I'm waiting to see when I can have that kind of perfect chemistry.
Bradley Cooper would have been good.
He would have been great. He went on to do A Star is Born at the end of the option period for the book. And he wrote, directed, starred, and acted. And he was on to that. And so then I had the rights over at Warner Brothers, but we had to figure out another play after that.
It'll get made.
And sometimes when that kind of lag happens, I think that while it might have been awesome with Bradley Cooper, I feel like it's going to be phenomenal with whoever is next.
You never know. It might be good if it's someone who's not as well known, right? Because the point of Orphan X is he blends in. Also not too handsome, and that would have been pretty hard with Bradley Cooper.
You're like, can you be a little less attractive, please? What can we do to make you less attractive? It's one of those things, I think, where, as you said, if you get somebody who is super, super well known, there's already a myth behind them. And being able to put somebody in the position of making this as a jumpstart of their career, which then is also the jumpstart of Orphan X's career, there could be a lot of chemistry in there in that one person to make this absolutely shine.
I think that's exactly right. I think we're seeing that a little bit in the Jack Reacher TV series, for instance.
That was exactly what I was thinking of. This is a relatively unknown person who is making a name for himself with something specific.
One of the things I like about Evan is he is this, quote, loner, but he has a whole cadre of people with him and behind him. He's got Candy. He's got Joey. He's got the
armorer.
Yeah. He's got the guy with the airplane, Aragon.
Yeah. He starts out as a lone wolf, but the thing is when we're reading, what we like to read quite often are relationships, right? So he's a lone wolf, but he's building this weird cadre of people around him who he's slowly coming to trust. I mean, one of the things that I remark on in the books is that Evan, being raised outside the system to be an assassin, I'd say he never learned to speak the strange language of intimacy. And so a lot of this is these relationships and him learning to trust and how to trust and all those other things. It's pretty important, you know, and so that's a big part of charting his growth is, can he figure out and learn how to deal with people in the real world? He's somebody who could garrote a child molester in a banya in Moscow without thinking twice. But he gets like undone in the real world if he has to make small talk at the mail slots with somebody. He lives hiding in plain sight. He's got a penthouse in a residential tower with a bunch of other people. So he lives among ordinary people. And so he hides that way, but he still has to interact with them. And so he's this like larger than life character in his secret life. But then he comes home and he's got to get on the elevator and have Ida Rosenbaum from downstairs is like yelling at him that his truck leaked oil and he's holding on to his arm, hoping that the blood doesn't start dripping that she hasn't seen. And he's weaving in and out of this archetypal world and the real world where you and I live.
I would think that as far as a reader goes, while the action adventure, I'm sure that you put into these books with the assassinations and the things that he's getting involved in, that could be anyone without the humanity part of it. And it's the humanity part of it that makes people want to tattoo things on their body. It's the humanity part of it that makes people want to make jewelry because they want to come back. They're rooting for him no matter what he does. Do you structure each book to make sure that he is growing in a specific way, or is that more of an organic thing that happens while you're doing the action adventure part?
You're talking like a writer now, for sure, because
sorry.
No, it's great. I mean, as you know, character is everything. Like if you stop someone on the street and ask them their favorite James Bond action scene, they might take a moment, but everybody knows how he takes his martini, right? Yeah. It's got to be character. We have to care about what he's doing and what he's learning. And for me, every mission he goes on in the book is him getting like a small piece of his soul back almost. So the external has to be matched with something that he's up against internally for himself.
Absolutely.
He has a relationship with a young boy named Peter, and he's sort of like a big brother to him, would you say?
So downstairs from him in his penthouse condo where nobody knows who he is, he lives under an alias when he's there. And downstairs from him, there's a single mother whose husband died, and she has an 8-year-old boy named Peter. And so I think Evan feels some overlap with this boy because he's almost like an orphan the way that Evan was, but he's being raised properly in the real world with real relationships and real intimacy and love and all these things that Evan never had. And Evan's very drawn to Mia, his mother. But the complication is, of course, that Mia is a district attorney. So if she ever really knew who he was, she'd have to put him in jail. Like, it's a very tough relationship.
That would be a little bit rough. That's got to be interesting for him to watch what it could have been.
That's right.
Because I haven't read these, but let me tell you that while we've been talking, I already went and ordered them. As far as his parents, do we find out how he ended up in the system, or is that something that you let ride?
Yeah, I mean, if you read through that series, you're going to get bits and pieces along the way. So
every
book is a good jumping on point. Like, you can read The Last Orphan, and I'll reset the story so that every book is a point of entry. But for those of you who love characters and series books, you can certainly start at the front, and there's going to be a lot of Easter eggs and a lot of the growth through the series that you'll appreciate, I hope.
I have to start at the beginning. Sorry. That's like that's
welcome aboard.
Okay. All right. Well, I have a lot of tattoos, so I can't guarantee that I will get anything new put on. But I will very much, I'm sure, love everything. I love characters. Now, I write cozy mystery, so I am far more laughy, fun, small town kind of than you are. But I love reading those. And I'm always fascinated by how your mind works to get all of those threads to weave together into a story. I really appreciate the information, because now I'm all afire to go. In fact, can we end now so that I can go start reading?
You will not be disappointed. One of the things I like is all of your female characters are strong women. You have Candy, who's going to take the world apart. Joey, even though she's a little unsure of herself. But I loved Ruby in this story, and her mother, Deborah. They were such good characters. Even Naomi Templeton, who is Secret Service.
Yeah.
She's a strong woman too. They're all such good characters. Do you base them on real people?
I don't. I think people can tell if a male author likes women when they're writing women. I think it's kind of evident. And
yes.
And part of it for me is I don't want to write fantasy depictions of women, though Candy certainly has some aspect of that. She's within herself. She knows that that's what she's doing too, the same way that Evan does. But for me, it's really important. I don't think as much about writing strong women characters. I think about writing complicated women characters, right? Because we don't often say, oh, I'm so glad Evan Smoak is a strong male character, right?
No, we don't.
I want them to be flawed. I want them to have nuance. I want them to have insight. I want them to be really different and differentiated. And so in my head, whenever I'm writing a character, I'm not writing a male character or a female character or a black character or a white character. I'm writing one character. I'm writing one person. And if I think of them through that lens, then I feel like I can avoid some of the stuff that turns into cliches or turns into stereotypes or turns into writing a flatter version of a character.
Writing Ruby.
That's right. Just writing
Ruby. I love it. I think it's so important too, because you could have a great, strong woman character, but if she has no edges, I love flaws. Like that's my jam, is give me the ones that are not perfect and show me how they try. Because I think that that's where a lot of people dig in, because they see pieces of themselves. I'm sure that when I read, I will see pieces of myself in Evan, even though we have nothing in common. I did not grow up in the system. I'm not an assassin that anybody knows. But in the scheme of things, there are going to be pieces that I'm going to be like, oh, well, I feel you on that one, which then allows you to invest yourself in that character and want to continue on with them.
That's right.
Awesome.
You're speaking from having done it.
I'm a fan. I haven't read a word yet, but I know I'm going to love it.
I liked the interaction with Evan and Joey when he gave her the birthday present. You could feel how he wasn't really comfortable, but he knew he should do something special for her. And it was beautifully written.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Joey is a 16-year-old hacker. She's the last thing Evan ever wanted to deal with. We meet her in the third book, which is called Hellbent. she's a brilliant, brilliant hacker, and he kind of gets saddled with her on a mission, and all he wants to do is get rid of her. And they really develop a slow and powerful rapport over the books. Yep. And she talks to him in ways no one else can or no one else will. And she brought up so much nuance around his character. It was just amazing. And so I was supposed to kill her at the end of Hellbent. And those of you who get there, you can see the exact scene where that's supposed to be it, where she's supposed to die. And I couldn't do it. There was so much in her that brought out so much in Evan. And so she stuck around, and their rapport is really special. I think he's closer to her than anybody else. And I think that he's got like an avuncular relationship with her, right? And he's got a real protectiveness. And I think he understands, got a lot of care for her in a way he can't really deny despite all of his training. And so that leads to some pretty special moments between them.
But he can't say it.
No, of course not.
No.
I'm not going to say it.
You're the worst.
Although that can be exciting too to watch, just to kind of, again, another key that people are going to be looking for. They want to see how that relationship is going to bloom. Right. And sometimes petals fall off the flowers, and sometimes they come back, and can be a really great thing. When you started book 1, did you think that there were going to be 8?
I was hoping that it would be received well and that there could be more than 8.
Okay.
That was the dream. And it took me a long time. I had to really figure my way around this character and make sure that I had a good handle. I wrote 4 other books while I was thinking about this one. I just kept keeping it simmering on a back burner. I really wanted him to be able to have a place on the pantheon of a lot of those great characters, or be able to maybe have a place among those great characters who I grew up with. But my hope was that it would hit and take off. You know, look, sometimes planning works out.
And that's not a bad thing.
Not at all.
No. So when you were making him, did parts of him come to you unbidden? Did you think, okay, so your name is Evan? Or did he come to you and say, hey, my name is Evan? And you know,
it's always a dance, right? I mean, because you're thinking, and you put yourself in a state of mind where I never want to talk about it like it's precious, like I'm sitting in the lotus position beckoning the muse.
Come on, don't ruin the fairy tale for all of the readers. That's totally what we do.
When I'm sitting down, I mean, I did a lot of research. I trained in mixed martial arts fighting. I shoot every gun Evan shoots. I did a lot of research into PSYOPs, psychological operations. I snuck on demolition ranges with SEALs to blow up a car. I did a ton of work. And while I was doing that, I kept thinking, what's going to make him different? What's going to make him special? What are those points of texture that's going to make him catch right in the minds of other people?
I like when he gets into a situation where he knows he's going to have to fight, he has to go through. Now, if this guy over here, there's another one over there, I have to scope out both of them. In his mind, he's setting up the whole thing.
That's right.
And it's very good part of the story because
thank you.
You can see how he's thinking.
I'm delighted you enjoyed it.
So then that's deep POV for you. You make sure that we're all the way in his head, like a deep point of view, as opposed to some action adventure stories tend to be a little more surface. Clive Cussler, for instance, you know Dirk Pitt, but you don't know Dirk Pitt. For yours, you know Evan Smoak.
I'm trying to get into his guts. It's a story about him learning how to become a human in a real way.
Yeah.
Told through a thriller series. But that's the core of it. That's the beating heart of it.
I love it. I love it.
And they're fast reads. You can't put them down when you start.
Oh, all right. Yeah. Well, then I might have to wait until a little bit later to start that. If I'm not going to be able to put it down, I still have to eat dinner. I'll do that first.
All right. Well, off to dinner with you. And so I'm so glad you guys are enjoying the character and the discussion around it. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you for talking with us, and we wish you all the best in your writings and everything else. And you enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you. You too. It was wonderful talking to you both.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Sure.
Trivia. Last week's question was, where did Dorothy L. Sayers get the names for her characters in her book, The Nine Tailors? A. Graves in the Cemetery. B. Her Neighbors. C. Her School Friends. Or D. The Baptism Rolls in Church? The answer is A. She grew up in the tiny village of Bluntisham in Huntingdonshire. After her father was given the living there as a rector of the Bluntisham cum Earth Church, the church graveyard next to the elegant Regency-styled rectory features the surnames of several characters from her mystery, The Nine Tailors. This week's question is, Gregg Hurwitz received the Harvard Undergraduate Scholar Award for what? A. Chess. B. Boxing. C. Pole vault. Or D. Croquet. Good luck. Well, that brings us to the end of another episode. We thank you for listening. We hope you'll join us next week. And remember,
Life would be boring without a little mystery. Bye.